The topic today we will be discussing is leadership traits and types. The main objectives in this lesson are to understand definition and nature of leadership, traits of a leader, types of leaders which include autocratic, democratic and charismatic. Leadership can be defined as the art of influencing and inspiring subordinates to perform their duties willingly, competently and enthusiastically in order to achieve the desired organizational goals. A dictatorship under which the subordinates have to perform would not be considered as leadership. A true leader motivates the followers to follow and induces a belief that the followers will gain by the policies of the leader. Generally speaking, leaders are known to possess energy, intelligence, self-confidence, patience, maturity and a charismatic appearance and attitude. Whether these characteristics are inherited or learned is still a subject of debate. Which one of these characteristics are important and necessary for leadership is not explainable. Many of these traits are also exhibited by followers, and it is not explained as to why followers could not become leaders. Leaders are also judged by their behaviors as leaders irrespective of the characteristics. If the manager has high consideration for the welfare of his subordinates and his policies, procedures and work assignments are all acceptable to the subordinates, then such a manager would be considered as a good leader. It is also possible to become a leader if you know what the followers want and you have the resources or the know-how to satisfy these needs and wants irrespective of the traits of the leadership. The job of a leader becomes even easier when the subordinates are sufficiently mature, where the maturity of the subordinates can be defined as their ability and willingness to take responsibility for directing their own behavior in relation to a given task. There are three different types of leadership styles, which are autocratic leaders who make their own decisions and expect the subordinates to implement these decisions and accept no deviation from it. Then there are democratic types of leaders where the leaders ask the subordinates for input and feedback before making decisions, and such input and feedback is taken into consideration very seriously. Finally, there is charismatic type of leaders who lure and motivate the subordinates towards performance beyond expectations, innovations, creations and create work culture among the followers. All leaders are expected to be able to inspire and motivate others. They should possess the skills of problem solving as well as skills of effective communication. They should be emotionally mature and should be able to understand human behavior. They should be dedicated to the purpose of achieving organizational objectives and should be willing to take limited calculated risks when making decisions and during the decision implementation process. Now we come to the definition and nature of leadership. As discussed earlier, leadership is an integral part of management and plays a vital role in managerial operations. If there is any single factor that differentiates between successful and unsuccessful organizations, it is dynamic and effective leadership. Leadership is not an attribute of business alone. In the army, in the government, in universities, in hospitals and everywhere else where people work in groups, the leadership function emerges. There must be somebody to guide that group. The group leader may also be an informal leader, one who emerges from the ranks of the group according to consensus of the members. Leadership may be defined as the art of influencing and inspiring subordinates to perform their duties willingly, competently and enthusiastically for achievement of group objectives. Most management writers agree that leadership is the process of influencing the activities of an individual or a group in efforts towards goal achievement in a given situation. Now we discuss some important definitions of leadership, which are The first one is, leadership is the ability of developing and communicating a vision to a group of people that will make that vision true. The next, leadership is a communication process of influencing and directing people to commit to and achieve a shared goal voluntarily in a given situation. Leadership as defined is the ability to influence a group toward the achievement of a vision or set of goals. Now we come to the nature of leadership. Leadership is essential for managing. The ability to lead effectively is one of the keys to being an effective manager because he or she has to combine resources and lead a group to achieve objectives. Then leadership and motivation are closely related. By understanding motivation, one can appreciate better what people want and why they act as they do. A leader can encourage or dampen workers' motivation by creating a favorable or unfavorable working environment in the organization. The essence of leadership is followership. In other words, it is the willingness of people to follow a person that makes that person a leader. Moreover, people tend to follow those whom they see as providing a means of achieving their desires, needs, and wants. Leadership also involves an unequal distribution of power between leaders and group members. Group members are not powerless, they can shape group activities in some ways. Still, the leader will usually have more power than the group members. Leaders can influence the followers' behavior in some ways. Leaders can influence workers either to do ill or well for the company. The leader must be able to empower and motivate the followers to the cause. The leader must coexist with the subordinates or followers and must have a clear idea about their demands and ambitions. This creates loyalty and trust in subordinates for their leader. Leadership is to be concerned about values. Followers learn ethics and values from their leaders. Leaders are the real teachers of ethics as they can reinforce ideas. Leaders need to make positive statements of ethics if hypocritical. Now we come to the traits of a leader. Leadership is an intangible quality and its effectiveness can be judged by the behavior and attitudes of followers. Even though personal backgrounds and personalities differ widely, some of the factors such as education and socio-economic status are poor indicators of judgments of successful leaders. A good leader in action is recognized, but it has not been possible to determine in advance by tests or other means whether or not a person will develop into a good leader, but it is this intangible quality of good leadership which causes an unorganized group to gel into an organized system and makes it effective. The ability to lead effectively is one of the key characteristics of an effective leader. However, some behavioral characteristics may be common to most of the successful and effective leaders. Some of these characteristics are as follows. First, ability to inspire others. This ability may be due to an internal charisma, that is an inborn trait, and may be a learnable factor. Problem solving skills. An effective leader has developed the patience and ability to look at the problem from various angles and get down to the cause of the problem, and he tries to solve the problem from its roots rather than the symptoms of the problem. Next, emotional maturity. Emotional stability and maturity is a major ingredient for effective leadership. It pertains to good adjustment to life, calm, cool and calculated reaction to undesirable situations and obstacles, and normal acceptance of success as well as failure. Such leaders are self-confident, rational and are open-hearted towards differences in opinions and opposing viewpoints. They generally have a happy family life and have a balanced outlook towards life and the world. They are warm and sensitive and not vindictive in nature. Next, ability to understand human behavior. A leader must understand the needs, desires and behavior of his subordinates and show respect for such desires. He is emotionally supportive and is careful enough to avoid ego-threatening behavior. He must give credit to subordinates when their efforts are successful. Next, verbal assertiveness. A leader must be an effective orator and must be confident of his views and opinions. He must communicate his views honestly and in a straightforward manner without fear of consequences. Next, willingness to take risks. Routine work, no matter how well done, never makes a leader. Successful leaders always charter the unknown. They must accept and seek new challenges. However, the risks must be calculated once and outcomes of actions be reasonably predicted. Should these risks result in failure, a leader must take full blame and responsibility and not shift blame on others. Even though they may be operative factors, he must be willing to tolerate frustrations and defeat and learn from these failures. Next, dedication to organizational goals. A leader must demonstrate his dedication and commitment to the organization's mission, goals and objectives by hard work and self-sacrifice. He must make sure that his followers fully understand the organizational objectives and are equally dedicated and willing to work for these objectives. Next, skill in the art of compromise. Settling differences is a vital part of leadership, and genuine differences must be solved by compromise and consensus. This will induce faith in the fairness of the leader. He must be willing to give in where necessary and must be able to take criticism with grace. However, he must not compromise for the sake of compromising or just smooth sailing, but must be willing to take a stand on controversial issues and accept the consequences of his stand. Next, intelligence. A leader needs to be intelligent enough to analyze the pros and cons of a situation and take a decision accordingly. He also needs to have a vision and foresightedness so that he can predict the future impact of the decisions taken by him. Next, integrity. A leader needs to possess a high level of integrity and honesty. He should have a fair outlook and should base his judgment on the facts and logic. He should be objective and not biased. Now we come to the types of leaders. Every group of people that performs near its total capacity has some person leading it. What the leader does determines how well he leads. Leadership style or type is the typical approach a particular person uses to lead people. A type of leadership is a relatively enduring set of behaviors which is characteristic of the individual regardless of the situation. Some of the more significant leadership styles are discussed as follows. First, we will be discussing about autocratic leader. Autocratic leaders centralize power of decision making in themselves. They structure the entire work situation in their own way and expect the workers to follow their orders and tolerate no deviation from their orders. The subordinates are required to implement instructions of their leaders without question. They are entirely dependent on their leaders and the output suffers in the absence of the leader. The autocratic leadership style ranges from tough and highly dictatorial to paternalistic depending upon whether the leader's motivational approach is threat and punishment or appreciation and rewards. In highly autocratic situations, the subordinates develop a sense of insecurity, frustration, low morale, and they are induced to avoid responsibility, initiative, and innovative behavior. The autocratic leader believes that his leadership is based upon the authority conferred upon him by some sources as his position, knowledge, strength, or the power to punish and reward. Now we discuss the advantages. First, autocratic leadership is useful when the subordinates are new on the job and have had an experience within the managerial decision-making process or in performing without active supervision. It will increase in efficiency and even morale and get quicker results, especially in a crisis or emergency when the decision must be taken immediately. The paternalistic leadership is useful when the subordinates are not interested in seeking responsibility or when they feel insecure at the job when they work better under clear and detailed directives. It is useful when the chain of command and the division of work is clear and understood by all and there is little room for error in final accomplishment. Now we see the disadvantages. The first one-way communication without feedback leads to misunderstanding and communication breakdown. An autocratic leader makes his own decisions that can be very dangerous in this age of technological and sociological complexity. Since it inhibits the subordinate's freedom, it fails to develop his commitment to the goals and objectives of the organization. Since it creates the environment that provides for workers' resentment, it creates problems with their morale, resulting in poor productivity in the long run. It is unsuitable when the workforce is knowledgeable about their jobs and the job calls for teamwork and cooperative spirit. Now the second type of leadership, which is democratic leader. In this type of leadership, the subordinates are consulted and their feedback is taken into the decision making process. The leader's job is primarily of a moderator, even though he makes the final decision and he alone is responsible for the results. The management recognizes that the subordinates are equipped with talents and abilities and that they are capable of bringing new ideas and new methodologies to work setting. Thus, the group members are encouraged to demonstrate initiative and creativity and take intelligent interest in setting plans and policies and have maximum participation in decision making. This ensures better management labor relations, higher morale and greater job satisfaction. This type of leadership is especially effective when the workforce is experienced and dedicated and is able to work independently with least directives, thereby developing a climate that is conducive to growth and development of the organization as well as the individual personality. Now we see some of the advantages and disadvantages of democratic leadership. First, the advantages. Active participation in managerial operations by labor assures rising productivity and satisfaction. Workers develop a greater sense of self-esteem due to importance given to their ideas and their contributions. The employees become more committed to changes that may be brought by policy changes, since they themselves participated in bringing about these changes. The leadership induces confidence, cooperation and loyalty among workers. It results in higher employee morale. It increases the participants' understanding of each other that results in greater tolerance and patience towards others. Now we see the disadvantages of democratic leadership. First one, the democratic leadership requires some favorable conditions in that the labor must be literate, informed and organized. This approach assumes that all workers are genuinely interested in the organization and that their individual goals are successfully fused with the organizational goals. There must be total trust on the part of management as well as employees. Some employees may consider this approach simply an attempt to manipulate them. Accordingly, the employees must be fully receptive to this approach to make it meaningful. Some group members may feel alienated if their ideas are not accepted for action. This may create a feeling of frustration and ill will. This approach is very time consuming and too many viewpoints and ideas may take coming to a decision more difficult and may be a source of frustration to impatient management. This approach relies heavily on incentives and motivation of recognition, appreciation, status and prestige. However, labor may be interested in financial incentives instead of prestige. Next we come to charismatic leadership. Charismatic leaders are often identified in times of crisis and exhibit exceptional devotion to and expertise in their fields. They are often people with a clear vision in business or politics and the ability to engage with a large audience. The characters of a charismatic leader include self-confidence, confidence in subordinates, ideological vision, and use of personal experience. The characters of the followers of the charismatic leader emulate the leader's values, behaviors, and derive self-esteem from their relationship with the leader. A charismatic leadership definition is incomplete if it does not focus on the leader personally. More than other popular leadership styles, charismatic leadership depends on the personality and actions of the leader, not the process or structure. Charismatic leaders are essentially very skilled communicators, individuals who are verbally equivalent but are also able to communicate to followers on a deep emotional level. They are able to articulate a compelling or captivating vision and to arouse strong emotions in followers. Charismatic leaders tend to be able to see the gaps between what an organization delivers to its workers and what the workers need from the organization. They create visions that their supporters can readily see, and in return the supporters are motivated to contribute to the common goal. Now we see the advantages and disadvantages of charismatic leadership. First, we see the advantages. There are many advantages to this leadership style. Charismatic leaders are often a catalyst for social change. They are, however, not a fit for organizations that depend on rigid structures and processes to function. Charismatic leaders inspire people to work together for a common cause. Organizations are committed to a central mission. Management prioritizes learning from mistakes in an effort to succeed in their mission. Charismatic-led companies tend to be cohesive because their workers have a clear purpose. Next, the disadvantages of charismatic leadership. First one, leaders may develop tunnel vision or arrogance, undoing their previous good deeds. Organizations can become dependent on charismatic leaders and may suffer if he or she retires, leaves the company, or dies suddenly. Charismatic leaders sometimes become unresponsive to their subordinates or constituents. These leaders may not learn from their mistakes, compounding them. Charismatic leaders may believe they are above the law, committing financial or ethical violations. Now we discuss the summary of the chapter. Leadership can be defined as the art of influencing and inspiring subordinates to perform their duties willingly, competently, and enthusiastically in order to achieve the desired organizational goals. A dictatorship under which the subordinates have to perform would not be considered as leadership. A true leader motivates the followers to follow and induces a belief that the followers will gain by the policies of the leader.